Well, hello, everybody. For us, we're on time. For you, we're 15 minutes late because this is many times in the course of my career, have I booked plane tickets on the wrong days? Have I put up times for interviews, the wrong times? So I'm going to be gentle with myself. I already apologized to Lydia, and I want to apologize to you for my error and its impact on you, heartfeltly. But for those of you that are here, welcome. And we hope that you will join us in conversation and maybe put notes in the comments that we'll be able to slide up on screen. But let me introduce you to Lydia Hooper and tell you why I wanted to talk with Lydia. You're going to blush, Lydia, so brace yourself, perhaps.
It happens all the time.
You inspire me quite a lot with the congruence and integrity with which you walk your path. And I look to you often for inspiration, especially right now. And I thought, boy, if there's a person that I could be in conversation with, it sure would be her at this particular moment in time. So I'm hoping that our conversation is grounding and anchoring and fruitful for you and enlivening. But I think I'll be the one that gains more. But would you introduce yourself to everyone and toot your horn?
Yes. And I first just want to say I received that with such warmth. Thank you, Tracy. I also feel just this kindredness with you. Every time we connect, it just is like this bright spot in my day. So it's really such a pleasure to be here. What can I say about myself? I have come into thinking of myself as a healing-centered strategist and facilitator. I've had many different pieces of my life that have woven into me sort of claiming that seat. I currently facilitate restorative justice processes and climate grief workshops. I'm very passionate about both of those things. I'm a content creator, and I love working with teams who are committed to living into their explicit values.
Mm.
So taking those values and translating them into embodied practice. I'm really passionate about supporting people with that. So thank you again for having me. It's just such a joy.
Yeah. I want everyone to feel included. And while I know what restorative justice means, and I have some ideas about climate grief, I got very, can we define those for the folks that are joining? And hello, Antya, we can see you here. She said hello to us both.
Hi. Thank you for saying hi. So yes, I can try. I won't really define them. I'll just more talk about kind of my experience of them. And I appreciate that invitation because both of these things I think are needing to be named right now, needing to be presenced as choices for people. So restorative justice comes out of Indigenous knowledge and practice. It has come into certain social systems as a way of repairing harm, acknowledging impact, and giving opportunity for people to take responsibility. My own relationship to it is one of appreciating how it's community-centered. It's really looking at how can we start to create circles for one another that can hold what needs to be held and seen and witnessed. And it's just really beautiful to see the transformation that can happen through that. Climate grief is considered to be the most disenfranchised grief of our time, which means it's just so often is unacknowledged. And it's very complex. You know, it can mean so many different things because, as we know, grief is not a simple thing. It's filled with all kinds of emotions and doesn't have clear boundaries in terms of time. So Yeah, how I think about it. And sometimes it's also referred to as eco grief. And for some people, that might be a more relatable term. Um, but it's just kind of an experience of acknowledging the loss that's happening in our natural world and how we're part of that world. And so how we experience that loss matters greatly. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I hope that that was helpful. And please let me know if there's anything
Yeah.
still
I want to say hi, and then I want to ask you a question. Rita, I'm sorry if you thought this was like a Zoom call where we were going to all be in a group. You can chat with us the whole time, but it's not like a Zoom call. And I wanted to say hi also to Rain, who said hello and is excited about the subject of inclusion. She's a great therapist that I went to grad school with. What, for the sake of what might be important that we, because I'm sorry that I'm taking us down another hole, but this grief piece seems really important to just stay with for a second. Partly because I know our live stream is also going to my private Facebook feed, and I just posted something on climate grief yesterday. So this will be right on the top of it. So the timing is very serendipitous. But what does grief give us if we come together and feel grief about maybe something that we don't have a ton of control over in the macro? For the sake of what?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That's such an important question. One of my primary teachers around this is Joanna Macy, and I have learned so much from her and her life. And so that's what I reference when you ask me this question. I think about how she writes and speaks on how when we feel that grief, it's a way that we're acknowledging that we are connected to this earth and to everything that is part of this earthly experience. And so that alone can be resourcing, can be a way that we can remember that we belong here. Like, you know, we might be talking more about belonging here. And so that's so fruitful for me because, you know, as we talk more maybe about belonging, being able to belong to my neighborhood and the trees that grow around me, being able to belong to the birds that I see flying over me as I move through my city and outside my city. I mean, being able to belong to something that's greater is so enriching and resourcing. So that's my own kind of personal experience of taking that teaching into practice. Sometimes when I facilitate this work, I want to emphasize that it's also rehumanizing. It's a way that we can acknowledge that our pain is about our capacity for feeling, and the importance of that helps us understand that we matter both as individuals and also as a collective. And for some people, touching into one or both of those things can also bring alive for them more motivation. I don't really know if that's the right word, but, you know, more of a sense of like connecting to their own desire around what they want this world to be, what they want to create in the world, what they want to be part of. And I think that that's also really important around what you were alluding to of just the level, the scale at which these problems exist and the level at which people can feel helpless. So being able to touch into, you know, we're here. This matters to us. Let's stay with that. You know, let's stay with that and see what we can create from that place.
It's funny, the way we're talking about this already brings us into the topic, because what I hear you sort of saying is that grief is actually a doorway into belonging. And I kind of heard belonging on 3 levels: of belonging to your body, because you feel this in your body, a belonging to nature for sure, and maybe belonging to a larger meaning and community. through the grief.
For sure.
Mm.
And I think when I think about, like, there's something else I feel moved to add here, which is why I mentioned my teachers like Joanna Macy. It's also connection to lineage
Mm.
and potentially ancestry,
Mm.
right? Because it's the people who steward this earth are the reason I can be here today. So it's acknowledging, so many different parts of our experiences where we might not understand there can be experiences of belonging.
Mm.
And we've kind of forgotten, you know, we've gotten used to looking in very specific places for that.
Yeah.
So another one of my teachers, Lama Rod Owens, his work, The Seven Homecomings, is so powerful around this, like how we can connect with so many different resources, and make that a practice, and it can really change. It can change us. That's been my experience. It can change how we move in the world.
You know what happens in my body as I listen to you talking about connecting to lineage is I just get this felt sense of power in belonging to lineage. I can feel like if I felt a little deflated before we started talking just because of what's going on in the world, as soon as you said that, something shifted inside of me. I don't know for those of you that are listening what happened for you, but yeah, I don't know. But I wanted to sort of anchor us a little bit in the question so that folks feel included in this question about what does it mean to include when we have felt excluded? I hope I'm wording it right.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to include others when we ourselves feel excluded? And I'm curious, we started exchanging ideas, and this was the question that emerged. What draws you to this question, and what's alive in you around this question?
Tracy, I just feel like so much pain that I observe in this world at so many different scales. I now, as a result of, my practices and many experiences, it feels so clear to me how much of this is about this human need for belonging and what happens when there's disruption in that experience, either in terms of what we observe and how that lives in us, but also how that lives in us in terms of the stories we tell ourselves, and how those stories continue to live on in how we decide to show up and be with each other. And so, yeah, I'm trying to stay with that because paradoxically, I feel like that is the thing that actually ties us together. And it's so tragic. Like, it hurts me to stay with it. But I think it's so important to find that place where we can say, we understand one another. And that's what's being kind of, I think, fractured in really deep ways right now.
I want to make sure I'm catching this right. What I'm hearing you say is that what we are trying to understand is that we all long to belong. It's not that, and that is the anchor point, that is the through line for all of us humans. And if we can keep not just, I've been teasing, I'm like, hey, this, for example, everyone's talking about loneliness. I say, look, loneliness is so much bigger than just social connection. Loneliness is about nature. Loneliness is about lineage. I mean, it's linked to belonging, right? And what I hear you saying is, I hear you inviting a deeper conversation here, which is we got to go much deeper with this conversation and not have it look like, sorry, this lipstick on a pig. I don't want to say, there's a politician use that phrase, but lipstick on a pig, right? I don't want to make it seem so simple. It's a really a spiritual, holy question. Like, what does it really mean for us to belong? And how are we tracking it every day? Because it's like as important as the food we eat and the air we breathe for our health. We know that, but we're not tracking it. I don't track it. I can get sidetracked on my phone and think that that's belonging. It's not. you know? I
Yeah.
told you already before we got on, I said, I had a friend come visit me today. And, we went for a long walk and we're touching the leaves and belonging to the land. And so is there a question there? I guess what's stopping us from anchoring into this? Is it because it's painful that we have these injuries around it? I don't know.
I think that's a big part of it. And I think what I said about stories is also really important. The story
Mm,
that we do, usually without realizing we're doing it, because it can become habit.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and it takes some work, I think, to pause and like notice and inquire and open
mm.
to have stories be transformed in some way. Um,
So can we ground that in something concrete? What do you mean?
yes, and I was going to ask you if you're willing. Is there something around this topic that's alive for you? Uh,
Ooh.
because I feel like that could open up a door that we could
Well,
explore.
since the sidewalk talk community is listening to me, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be really frank.
Yeah, please
As
be.
sidewalk talk grew and the community got really big, I felt like somebody on the outside of the community just, pouring concrete in the places where the building needed stability. But I don't feel like I'm on the inside of the building anymore.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh. And so I've been having a lot of thoughts about scaling, that there's a limit to how quickly you scale. Because if you scale too fast, like I don't know half the people that are here anymore.
Okay.
And I used to know every chapter leader.
Right.
I used to know who their spouses were.
Right.
And
Right.
now I don't. And some chapter leaders have left. I just before I got on with you, I just got a text message from somebody that just linked with me. He goes, oh, I used to be the chapter leader in Long Beach. Here's some pictures of me and my wife listening. I'm like, thanks, Lewis. I didn't even know. So it makes it very interesting to be contributing so much time and energy to something you don't feel quite a part of.
Mm.
So that's up for me. And then I'm a freaking lonely expat. Oh my word.
Okay.
I mean, I am an American living in Germany and I'm married to a German. I've grown to really appreciate some things I didn't understand about German culture, and I've grown to really appreciate things I didn't see about my own culture. But learning the language has been tough for me, and it's tough to make friends when you're asking somebody to speak your language in their land.
Yes.
And that's rough. That's rough. So those are the two topics up for me.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'd like to reflect back. Okay, so firstly, the idea of I kind of I think I heard two things there around almost like belonging to an idea of something, because when you give birth to something in a conceptual way, there is like a relationship you have with that idea, right? And so it's almost like, is that changing? What does that mean? Like some sort of um I think what's coming to me is sorrow. Some sorrow around that. Yeah. Okay. And then the community piece of I don't exactly know who's here anymore. I don't really know what's happening. It feels like maybe that changes the meaning, right, of what you're doing. Yeah. So it's like, is there almost like some alienation or something that feels like it's there around like, I don't feel completely connected in the way that I want to be.
I've given some thought to this. I think what happens when an organization gets big and you're the leader is that you become a figure in people's minds.
Yeah.
And it turns out that I don't actually get off too much on attention and idealization. I like it for like 5 minutes, but it's not meat and potatoes. So I'm either idealized or I'm de-idealized, but
Yes.
neither are true. So what happens is I don't actually feel seen.
Yes.
And
Okay.
belonging to me feels so much about attunement and being witnessed and my story being known while I hold other people's stories. And yeah, it used, yeah. And it used to be okay that that was happening in the organization when I had my own San Francisco chapter. Cause I'm like, well, that's okay. Cause I've got these 20 people that are part of my core chapter.
Yes.
So maybe that's okay. But it's been tricky.
Yeah. So I'll go to the conceptual place with you now. I feel like what I'm thinking about is symbolic power.
Mm.
I'm thinking about what happens, and sometimes it happens in a hierarchical situation where someone is in a leadership role in that sort of way, but it doesn't have to happen that way because what you're describing is also more of a networked kind of role. But you end up in this position of power where I think there's a depersonalization or something that happens in that process because you're serving a function that's symbolic for people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
hard because you're still a person. Thank you for sharing that because I wish this topic
Yeah.
talked about more. I wonder a lot about people who are in these situations and how the ripple effect of not staying with that for those people,
Mm-hmm.
getting enamored with the symbolic power and getting okay with losing themselves and the cost of that to themselves, but also to these networks, to these organizations who I think more than ever we need humans. We need
Right.
we need humanity. We don't need symbols, but that is kind of how we function, especially at scale.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're saying around scale is important too.
I love that you just brought this to other organizations because it's helpful. It makes me not feel so alone, but I really do think other leaders of other things
Yes.
get so sucked into the identity of that role that they're not a human anymore. Hey, can I bring in Antia?
Please.
Just commented. I'm going to just show it on the screen if I can. Yeah. I mean, in a way, that's what we're talking about here too. Like if I deepen into not just my love for the planet, but in some ways, I think you're saying my love for myself and being in connection
Yes.
teaches me to stay with the discomfort too, right? And that keeps me human as a leader. But I love what you're saying, Antia, because I feel like what Antia's saying is the other missing. I feel like we're just not connected to the planet and other other animals and plants at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what we say here, what we're talking about here with the role of the self is really interesting to me. If someone was to ask me, like, what is the practice that transformed you the most? And there's so many. I think I would say self-compassion. And I think for some people that would be counterintuitive or possibly even challenging. Specifically people that I think are community and earth oriented. I think it's almost this sense of like, how dare I think about myself when there's so much suffering. And what I have experienced is that coming into new relationship with myself is what allows me to have new relationship with the world. And
okay, so everybody says self-compassion, but can we be really I want to take these concepts and make them real for people because I sometimes, you know what I do with self-compassion? I use it in an emergency. Totally. It is, and as I train more in this trauma method, self-compassion is such a foundational piece. Like the orientation is no. We're going to actually walk through life with the orientation of self-compassion. What did she say? Don't use self-compassion to bully yourself into changing your state.
So important what you're saying, because I've been seeing this a lot of people, books I've been reading, where it feels like it's being used almost like a Band-Aid, where it's kind of like a hack.
A hack. Yeah.
Right?
That's raising my hand. That's been me.
A hack.
The self-compassion hack. That's me.
Yes. So the
If
first thing I
Stan
want to
Steindl
say,
watches this, he'll go, Tracy.
it makes sense. It makes
Sure.
sense
Yeah, of
that
course.
we're wired to look for those hacks. And I think also, I don't know, I love talking about compassion backdraft, which is a concept developed by Kristen Neff, brilliant person who goes really deep on self-compassion. And what that term refers to is how when we do have experiences of trauma, and I believe most of us do, so I want to say that, there's so much tenderness that comes up when we move towards ourselves, because we meet those wounds with the capacity we have at the time.
Yeah.
And if we overextend ourselves, perhaps even out of a desire to heal, right? Like out of a sincere, like desire for something wonderful for ourselves, that can take us deeper into a wound. So I want to just say it makes sense that there's this tenderness around how deep do we go with this, because it is going to depend on what our capacity is in the moment, and so that's where it's not just about self-compassion. It is about connecting to those other resources we've talked about in this conversation, and to community, if we want to bring it back to the belonging piece, like, you know, and being able to resonate with others to help us grow that capacities in the ways that we can.
So would you say that compassion is a certain kind of kindness towards the self, or reassurance, or resonating?
Yes, I think kindness is a really important part of it. I like that. I think when I think of compassion, I think of the notion of being with. So it's not empathy. I kind of want to say that too. I've gotten to this place that I think it's easy for us to slip out of that being with to some other thing. But the being with, that's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, my trainer, the one that said don't bully yourself into a different state, she calls it withness.
Love that.
Cultivating a state of withness. You'd like her. I think Anja said something. Oh, she just said thank you to us. Yeah, thanks for being here. What else feels in, I mean, so for a lot of marginalized folks, so should I bring this up?
Yes. I would encourage.
I was on Instagram, and a trans activist that I quite like was getting picked on by somebody in a more privileged position, right? And they were incredibly inclusive still. And all I could think was, that's a lot to be picked on and still hold this kind of capacity to hold this person's humanity with so much grace, so much grace. And yet I think that is noble work, is that when all of us, regardless of our rank, power, and privilege, or positional power in society, are working on belonging. I think my experience of this person is that they have worked on belonging so deeply inside themselves, that they belong so deeply to themselves at this point, that they identify less with their identity and more with their relationship to the theme of belonging. But geez Louise, does it take a lot of work.
And I think the way is through those, that's my experience. So wasn't exactly sure how much I was going to share about this, but let's see what emerges.
Do
I
you need anything?
I've been noticed. Thank you for checking in on that. I'm just taking a moment to connect with my body. Yeah, let's breathe. Been thinking a lot about how coming into relationship with the parts of myself that are subjugated, dominated, marginalized, oppressed. These are all different words, and they each come with different baggage. So I'm just bringing them all up, whatever resonates maybe with other people. Coming into that relationship with those parts of myself has been so fruitful for understanding what that means, what those words mean. What is, what are oppressive experiences? What are marginalization experiences? And I think specifically touching into those experiences with the self-compassion and the resourcing, to be able to be with, stay with. And I think also just acknowledging how complex these social systems are that we live in. Right now, I'm kind of feeling moved to speak to people who might be in what I call social locations. I don't call them identities, where they have a perception, or someone else has a perception that they have certain power, and they might not actually feel they have that power. And so I think that it's also important to complexify, is kind of what I want to use around what it is to be human in these systems, and how I heard recently there was this study done. I don't know. I think the title of the book is Covering, and I feel kind of bad that I don't know. But there was the study done and a book written about really high number of people. Like, I want to think 90% of people in the workplace are covering some aspect of who they are at work. And that said so much to me, right? About how we marginalize parts of ourselves, and how that matters for how we show up for each other. And so, yeah, I hope that what I just shared is inviting for all people, because I do think that this is complex. Like, I'm clearly a white-bodied person. I also am a female presenting person. So there are some obvious intersections there, but there are so many layers to our lived experiences and how we experience belonging or not.
Yeah. No, it's, yeah. The covering. I mean, covering any part of ourselves. Let's see what's coming up in me. I'm thinking about parts and covering parts of myself to myself. And I'm thinking about covering parts of myself to people in my life. And I'm thinking about the ways I cover parts of myself depending on which group I'm entering into. And some of that seems healthy.
Yes.
Some of that seems like a really wise thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah. I guess the question becomes, when does it become terrorizing or incredibly traumatizing to be covering, right? Like, I think there's always this balance of, yeah, I'm going to be contained in this environment because maybe these aspects of me wouldn't be so welcome here. Versus, when am I going to be contained because I might die if I reveal these aspects of myself?
Yes.
I mean, there's a real distinction there.
Yes.
Being welcomed or death.
Yes.
And yeah, I am thinking about, I got an email from a Sidewalk Talk chapter leader who said, I don't think I'm going to go listen on the sidewalk anymore. I don't feel safe. Right? And just by the very thought that they would be listening on the sidewalk, what makes them not feel safe is that they're going to be perceived to be on one political side, and the person that sits on a sidewalk and listens surely must belong to this camp, so therefore could be a target. And just thought, wow, okay.
Mm. Yeah, the idea of not being, and it's like for showing up, for just showing up and listening,
as a
right?
human.
That's touching into what I was saying earlier around just like thinking about my teacher Resma Menicum and how he talks about quaking. There's like social quaking that's alive right now. And for me, I named it as like this wound. And it's collective wound. It's not just an individual wound, but we forget that, which is why which is why I think it's important. Like, I don't know, part of compassion for me is shared humanity. So it's saying to myself, I too have had this experience. Other people have had this experience. This, I might feel different in this situation, and I'm not alone in that feeling because others have felt this before me. And others might be here now feeling this, and I don't know that.
Yeah.
And I think that gesture is more generative because it allows me to feel what comes up around what others can experience if I'm not present to how my actions are co-creating an experience of belonging for others as well. And so it's like this dance of like touching into myself, remembering I care about belonging. That's what's showing up in those moments of me feeling excluded or that I need to cover whatever. I so deeply care about belonging. I so deeply long for connection, for community, for reciprocity, for mutuality, for respect. I mean, there's so many things there. And those longings, I can then orient around and say, yes, I am longing for that. And from that longing, how can I be someone who welcomes in the other? And I don't necessarily the other to me, right? I mean, anyone who could be having an experience of feeling that disconnect.
You said something that I'm going to simplify, but I think to profoundify.
Okay.
You can see that I'm very playful. I'm going to take this intense topic. First of all, thank you for always being congruent in how you talk about inclusion and justice, because most of the time it feels when I talk about, I'm growing up in San Francisco and it can get very exclusive. And the way that you talk about it always welcomes me to the conversation and doesn't make me go, oh, am I going to get canceled? Right. So thank you for that. I think we need more people like you that say, come on in to this conversation.
Yes.
But the simplify to sort of amplify in a way, this thing that you just said, that when you start to feel a moment of an ouch, I feel on the outside. And then what you said after was a little bit of an aha to me. Because what you did is you turned it from an I awareness to a we awareness. And I went, oh, and it's so much more manageable. I'm not saying that you deny the pain of the I, but it's like Tonglen practice, right? It feels like holding, that's a Buddhist practice of, I don't know what you call it, collective compassion. That, oh, I'm feeling this pain because I'm somebody who cares about belonging, that it's not just a selfish ouch. And the way that you just flipped that felt very profound. And I wanted to slow it down and amplify that because it felt really like a big deal. When I feel lonely, it's not just about my loneliness. I feel lonely because I care about collective connection. I feel an ouch like an outsider, not because there's something wrong, but because I care about belonging. And from there, it's so much easier to deepen in there and stay with the experience and turn it into a healing sort of alchemization, because it doesn't feel like my pathology. There's something wrong with me, and there's something wrong with the system.
Yes.
I mean, while those may be true, I guess, it seems like a much more holistic doorway to walk through that doesn't have all this blamey, it's my fault. No, it's the culture's fault. No, the only thing that's going on here is I care about belonging. And it's not happening right now.
Yes, and it takes a lot of practice. So the one lineage I haven't named that I need to make sure we do not have this conversation without naming is nonviolent communication. And there's actually,
you and Marshall are like peas in a pod, girl.
There's like several lineages within nonviolent communication at this point. And so I want to also name that some of my teachers that have had the most profound influence on me are very interested in experiences of systems. So how social systems show up within interpersonal relationships and how we contend to that. And I've been so enriched by learning from those teachers, Sarah Payton, Mickey Costin, and Roxy Manning in particular. Yeah, and it takes a lot of practice to learn. So even when we were like brainstorming this topic and coming up with this word, included and excluded, I want to offer this for people. Those words are judgments. And we wouldn't necessarily see that because they're so normalized, and judgment is normalized in American culture for sure. And if we can recognize those are judgments and say, okay, is there another way that I could be in relationship with these experiences that aren't about evaluation, which actually disconnects me, like you were saying, the blaming, and that can be self-blaming. You know, there's a lot of folks in dominant social positions that struggle with like, oh, I'm really terrified to go into, you were, I think, naming this. I'm really terrified to go into certain conversations because I'm aware that there's things I don't know, and I feel overwhelmed by that. And yeah, so I just want to say, like, it can be a self-blame and it can also be a blame of other, but either way, it's a disconnect. So to reorient around, like, how can we name these experiences in ways that are not evaluative of each other? We can still evaluate the system and how it's functioning, but we do it with such tremendous care around how that's impacting what matters, which is our feelings of belonging and connection and our sense of shared purpose and meaning. And so being able to come back to those shared.
You see me, my lips moving because I'm going to interrupt the time because we actually have to wrap up because I have to go to another meeting. But I want to amplify this last thing that you said, because I think it's another one of those simple things that feels really worth amplifying, that this quality of evaluation actually not only, I think, is disconnective, but it actually then also takes us out of belonging too. Because I'm hearing you over and over again in subtle and not so subtle ways say, come back to where it hurts. Come back to where it hurts. Stay with where it hurts. And then orient towards that hurt by recognizing that that's showing you what matters to you.
Yeah.
Not where you're flawed or where the world is flawed. That's what I hear you saying. Did I get it right?
I'm so glad you heard that. And thank you for putting a pin in it so precisely, because I think that piece of it's not our fault. It's so important for coming together, which is the whole purpose.
This felt like a 5-minute conversation. I can't believe we were supposed to end like 5 minutes ago, and I just looked at the time like, oh my gosh. I hope that for those of you that listen on the podcast later, will go find Lydia. The only place that you can find her is on LinkedIn these days. No, her Substack. No, her Substack. Go to her Substack. She has really groovy stuff over there to follow. Super smart, like she was here in our conversation. So I think you'll get a lot of good juice over there. Thank you. It was
Oh,
so lovely to be eyeball to eyeball with you for the first
yes,
time.
I know.
It was so cool. And
Deep
happy
bow.
birthday to your son.
Aw. And thank you for going to the places. I want to
Mhm.
acknowledge you. Thank you so much for going to the places.
Mm,
Yes.
mm.
Mm. And
Girl, I'm going to
yeah,
toot your horn. I'm just so inspired by your work. Thank you for your work. And I can't wait to see what other things will have us intersect again. So,
yes, same. Let's keep the dialogue going.
all right. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you to everyone who joined. Bye.
Thanks, everyone who joined.